never thought I'd live this long. When I was younger, I used to say that half-jokingly, a way to brush off the thought of growing old. But now that I'm sitting here, 80 years behind me and no idea how many ahead, I see it differently. Living this long isn't just about counting candles on a cake. It's about carrying things no one prepares you for. You see, the weight doesn't always come from loss or loneliness, though there's plenty of that too. It comes from what time reveals, slowly, gently, and sometimes without mercy. There was a morning, I think I was 77, when I sat on the edge of my bed and realized I hadn't laughed, truly laughed, in weeks. Not because life was bad, but because it had grown quiet. People think silence is peaceful, and sometimes it is, but sometimes it's hollow. I looked around my little room, my books, my chair, the same view of the maple tree out front, and I missed something. Not someone, something. I realized then that you don't lose people all at once. It happens slowly. One forgets to call. One moves away. One passes quietly in the night. And one day you're the only one left at the table. That's something no one warned me about. Not the sadness, but the stillness that follows it. I used to host Sunday dinners. Big, loud, clumsy things. There was always too much food and never enough chairs. Grandkids under the table, someone always spilling something. And the stories, oh, the stories. We told the same ones year after year. No one cared. They were ours. And then, they stopped coming. No big fallout. Just life. They had their own things, their own Sundays. I understand. Truly, I do. But the empty chairs? They don't ask questions. They just wait. One of the hardest things about growing older isn't being forgotten. It's watching the things you once gave your life to go on without you. That realization, it cuts deep. But it also teaches. I've learned that presence is a gift. Not just being in a room, but being felt in it. And after 75, you start noticing when you're no longer part of the noise. Not out of bitterness, just awareness. The hardest part? I started fading before I even realized it. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know how to ask to stay. You spend decades being the strong one, the reliable one, the one who fixes, drives, lifts, leads. And then one day you're the one sitting quietly, hoping someone will ask how you're doing. Really ask. Not just in passing. But they rarely do. Not because they don't care. They just don't see it. You become background. Comfortable, constant, and slowly invisible. I remember once, maybe 5 years ago, my granddaughter stopped by. She was in a rush, talking fast, scrolling through her phone as she spoke. I had baked something just because I missed doing it. She smiled, thanked me, gave me a quick hug and said, "You're always so calm, Grandpa. I wish I could be like that." And I smiled, but inside I thought, this isn't calm. This is quiet grief. Not for a person, but for the part of me that used to feel known. That's another truth no one warns you about. The ache of not being understood anymore. You start to speak and they change the subject. You share a memory, and it feels like a story from a foreign land. And slowly, you stop offering pieces of yourself because they land on silent ground. There's no anger in that, just retreat. I found that, after a while, you begin to protect your own spirit the way you once protected your children. Carefully, quietly. Not everyone deserves to sit at the table of your heart. Not because they're unkind, but because your energy becomes sacred. And energy, that's the thing. I didn't have the strength like before. Not just in my body, in my spirit too. The kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep. The kind that asks for silence, not stimulation. It's strange, really, how your soul starts whispering when the world grows loud. And you find yourself saying no to invitations, not because you don't care, but because you finally do. About yourself. About peace. About how much it costs to be in a room that doesn't see you. I used to push through that. Force a smile. Be agreeable. Stay late. Say yes. But I don't do that anymore. And let me tell you, there's a certain kind of peace that only comes when you realize you don't owe your presence to everyone. Especially not to those who mistake your silence for weakness. Funny, isn't it? How it takes 75 years to finally learn how to say no without guilt. and mean it. I remember a time when I could sit on a porch with someone and not say a word, and still feel connected. These days, even when someone does come by, I often feel lonelier with them than I do by myself. Because now, more than ever, I notice the difference between presence and attention. They'll sit across from me, nodding politely, but their eyes are elsewhere. Their minds, too. It's like I'm being visited out of duty, not desire. And that wears you down in ways I never knew possible. You see, after a certain age, you start craving something different. Not more people, just realer people. Someone who isn't afraid of silence, who doesn't look uncomfortable when you pause to find the right word. Someone who listens not just to respond, but to understand. Those people are rare. And when you find them, you hold on to them. Not tightly, not possessively, just thankfully. Like a soft blanket on a cold morning. You don't need it all the time, but when you do, nothing else compares. I've come to learn that solitude isn't the same as loneliness. It took me years to see the difference. Loneliness feels like waiting for someone who won't come. Solitude feels like finally being okay if they don't. Some of the most healing moments I've had recently have been with myself. Sitting by the window, watching the light move across the floor, remembering little things, the way my wife hummed when she cooked, the creak in the floor by the front door, the exact rhythm of my mother's handwriting. Those things, they visit me now, uninvited, unannounced, but always welcome. They fill the quiet, not with noise, but with meaning. And that's another truth I've stumbled into in this late chapter of life. The deepest company sometimes comes from within. I used to think healing came from others, from being loved, being seen, being chosen. And maybe it does at first. But now I believe healing also comes from releasing. From letting go of the version of yourself that was always trying to be enough for everyone else. There's something profoundly freeing about no longer needing to prove your worth. Not in conversation, not in achievement, not even in love. I used to feel guilty for stepping back, declining invitations, saying no. But now, I see it as honoring what I've lived through. I've given enough, stayed late enough, held space for enough people who didn't hold it for me. These days, if my body says rest, I rest. If my heart says no, I listen. That's not selfish. That's sacred. You don't reach 80 without learning what your soul can and cannot carry anymore. And sometimes, what you can no longer carry is the weight of being misunderstood. I cannot count how many times I've shared something that mattered to me. A memory, a worry, a bit of old wisdom, only to be brushed aside, or worse, laughed at. They don't mean harm, but the wound still lands. So now I choose carefully, not out of fear, out of respect for myself. People often talk about boundaries like they're walls, but at this age, they're more like fences with a gentle gate. I don't lock people out. I just decide who gets to come in, and how long they stay. If you're still here, listening to me ramble, I'd like to ask something. Leave me a comment. Tell me something you've learned, not from books, not from others, but from living. I want to know what truths visited you late, what lessons arrived when no one else was looking. Those are the ones that stay. And if you've ever felt like the world moved on without you, I want you to know this. You're not behind. You're simply walking a quieter road now. A slower one. But maybe, just maybe, it's the one with the better view. I was sitting in my kitchen the other day, stirring my tea slower than usual. I used to rush everything, even breakfast. Now, I take my time, not because I have nothing to do, but because I finally understand that doing nothing is sometimes the most meaningful thing of all. I've come to believe that slowness isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of reverence. For time, for breath, for this moment, this one right here, that will never come again. And yet, the world around me seems faster every day. Faster conversations, faster emotions, faster goodbyes. It's not just that I don't understand the pace anymore. It's that I no longer want to keep up. People think age makes you slow, but I think it makes you selective. You start choosing what you let into your world. Noise? No thank you. Small talk? Not today. Gossip, drama, performance? I've lived too long for that. What I want now is sincerity. A real question. A moment of shared silence. A hand on mine without words. I remember when my old friend Walter passed away. He was 83. We had coffee together every Tuesday at a little cafe that smelled like cinnamon and old stories. We didn't say much near the end. We didn't have to.
Ide sip, ide sip. Ide not, ide not.
The kind of connection that doesn't need proving. When he died, I didn't cry right away. I just sat in his chair the next Tuesday, ordered his usual, left the extra cup across from me. The waitress asked, "He's not coming, is he?" I just shook my head. It's a strange ache. The one that comes not from tragedy, but from routine interrupted. You realize how much of your heart has been quietly tied to the simplest things. A morning ritual, a shared smile, a familiar voice calling your name. And when they vanish, it's not loud grief. It's the sound of an empty chair. There's a quiet kind of pain that sets in after 75. It's not sharp. It's not dramatic. It's soft, like a worn-out fabric. You notice the thinning, the fraying at the edges. And yet, it's not all sorrow. Because in that thinning, I've also found space. Space to remember. Space to feel. Space to finally be. I don't wear masks anymore. Not the kind to impress. Not the kind to protect. I let my face show what it shows. And I let my voice tremble when it does. There's something honest about age that I never understood when I was younger. When you have nothing left to prove, you finally begin to speak from truth, not performance. I no longer feel the need to be the loudest in the room. In fact, I prefer not to be in the room at all if I can't be fully present there. That's another quiet truth time has handed me. Just because I'm invited doesn't mean I belong. And just because I'm expected doesn't mean I have to show up. Obligation used to run my life. Now I choose peace over pressure. I remember being 40 and thinking I had to do it all. Host the holidays. Keep every friendship alive. Be the one who called, the one who fixed, the one who never said no. But I've learned that being everything to everyone often leaves you being nothing to yourself. These days, I let things be. If someone drifts, I don't chase. If a conversation feels forced, I step back. Not because I don't care, but because I finally care enough about me. And you know something else? There's a strange comfort in no longer being the center of everything. In fading quietly into the corners, where I can just observe, reflect, and smile at the foolishness I once mistook for urgency. I've watched whole dramas unfold from the quiet of my armchair. Family tensions, ambitions rising and falling, young people sprinting after things that won't matter in 5 years. And sometimes I want to shout, "Slow down! It's not what you think." But I don't, because I remember what it felt like to need to run, even when you didn't know where you were going. So instead, I just sit, and when they ask, I offer what I can. When they don't, I let the silence speak for me. Because after all this time, I've learned that not every truth needs to be taught. Some must be discovered. I never used to fear being a burden. Not when I was young and full of use, opening jars, carrying groceries, driving people to the airport, fixing whatever needed fixing. I was the help. People leaned on me, and I liked it. But somewhere along the way, the roles shifted. I remember the first time I asked my son to help me with the garden hose. It was just a small thing, but the look on his face, kind but distracted, it stayed with me longer than it should have. Since then, I've been more careful with what I ask. It's not that I believe I'm unwanted. It's just that when you've lived a long time, you start measuring the weight of your presence. Not just whether you're loved, but whether you're manageable. People say things like, "We're happy to help," and "It's no trouble at all." And maybe they mean it. But part of you doesn't want to test that too often. So you go quiet. You don't mention the stiff hip, the shortness of breath, the thing you dropped and couldn't quite pick up. You laugh instead. You change the subject. Because there's a kind of dignity that becomes more precious with age. And sometimes, to protect it, you sacrifice a little closeness. I know it sounds sad, but to me it's not despair. It's respect, both ways. Letting people live their lives, even if it means I sit alone a little longer. Even if the help I need goes unseen. It's not that I don't want company. I just don't want to be the reason someone's evening becomes complicated. And maybe that's the part no one tells you about aging. The shift from being essential to optional. I used to think that would break me, but strangely it softened me instead. I've become gentler with the people I love, less demanding, more observant. I watch how tired my daughter is after work. I see the worry behind my grandson's smile, and I find ways to love them quietly. A note, a slice of pie, a story from long ago that ends in laughter, not advice. You love differently when you realize your presence is now a choice, not a necessity. And yet, even in all this quiet, there's an ache, not from being alone, but from remembering a time when you didn't have to ask for closeness. It just happened, because you were younger, louder, central. Now the world spins faster, and you're not at the middle of it anymore. I get it. It's natural. But sometimes, late at night, when the house makes its little creaks and groans, I wonder if anyone else remembers the man I used to be. Not the version sitting in this chair, careful and slow, but the one who once stayed up past midnight fixing someone's sink. The one who never said no to a favor. He's still here, you know. He just moves slower. He thinks more. He doesn't want to get in the way. And that, perhaps, is the sharpest truth of all. The fear of being too much and not enough all at once. Too much trouble. Not enough to be needed. But I've started doing something I wish I'd done sooner. I've started telling the truth. When someone asks how I'm doing, I take a breath before I answer. And sometimes I say, I'm lonely today. Or, I wish you'd stayed a little longer last time. And you know what? Sometimes they don't know what to say. But sometimes, they stay. And we sit in that moment. Awkward, beautiful, real. That's the medicine I didn't know I needed. Not solutions. Not explanations. Just presence. You don't get to this age without feeling invisible at some point. But when someone sees you, really sees you, even for a second, it lights up something inside that you thought had gone dark for good. So I've learned to offer that light too. When I'm at the park, I smile at strangers. When I see someone looking lost, I say hello. Not because I'm trying to fix the world, but because I know what it means to be noticed, and what it costs to be ignored. This morning, I watched a bird land on the railing outside my window. A little thing, black and gray, with a touch of white on the wings. It sat still for a while, just breathing, looking around like it had all the time in the world. And then, it flew away. No rush. No drama. Just gone. I don't know why, but I felt like it left a message for me. Maybe it's because I've been thinking a lot about leaving lately, not in a morbid way, no, but in a gentle, honest way. You start to wonder after 75 what trace you'll leave behind. What parts of you will live on in quiet ways. A recipe, a story, a particular laugh someone can't quite forget. Maybe a piece of advice you gave offhand that someone carries like treasure. Or just the feeling they had when they were near you. I hope that matters. I hope I mattered, not because I did grand things, but because I was true. And if there's any wisdom I could offer now, after all these years, it's this. Be kind to your own memory. Treat your life like something worth honoring, even the parts you got wrong. I used to lie awake thinking about all the things I wish I'd done differently. All the apologies I should have made sooner. All the moments I rushed through without tasting. But now, I lie awake and give thanks. Not because everything was good, but because I lived it. All of it. The messy, the beautiful, the boring afternoons and the breathless goodbyes. They were mine. And now, as things slow down, I realize something no one told me. You don't need to outrun time. You just need to walk with it. Hand in hand. Gratefully. There's power in softening. There's healing in accepting that not every ending needs closure. Not every silence needs to be filled. And not every version of yourself needs to be explained. Some things are meant to simply be. If you've made it to the end of the story with me, thank you, truly, for sitting here, for listening, for sharing this quiet with me. If you'd like to return, you know where to find me. This space doesn't go anywhere. It waits, patiently, like an old porch chair, facing the sunset, ready for company, but just as content in stillness. I'll be here, And if the world gets too loud, too fast, too demanding, come back, breathe, and remember, you've lived more than most people dream of. You've earned every wrinkle, every quiet moment, every right to rest. Let the young chase their storms. You've earned your peace.